Since the dawn of humanity, the desire to unveil the future has been an unmistakable trait of the human psyche. Ancient peoples, whether observing the starry skies or interpreting the flight of birds, sought divine messages about what lay ahead. Greek oracles, for instance, were revered as bridges between the divine and the mortal. Plato once said, "All that is human desires eternity," and perhaps this yearning to foresee tomorrow reflects that quest to transcend the ephemeral. Think about it. How many times in your life have you wished for a clear answer about what's to come? From the prophets of the Bible, like Isaiah, to enigmatic figures like Nostradamus, there is a common denominator. Prophecies speak to the heart of human uncertainty. Nostradamus, for example, captured events with uncanny accuracy, at least in the eyes of his followers. But did he truly foresee the future, or was he merely a master of symbolic language? Curiously, even today, his work sparks debates and theories. Imagine having that ability, not to predict but to understand what others seek. The human fascination with prophecies transcends cultures, eras, and beliefs. There's a universal beauty in the act of interpreting the unknown, like assembling a puzzle without knowing the final image. This fascination reflects something profound, the need to find meaning amidst chaos. As Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists but will grow in size." Perhaps we resist an uncertain future precisely because it challenges us to face it. Over centuries, certain prophecies have stood out for their notoriety and impact. Nostradamus, the 16th-century French physician and seer, remains one of the most remembered figures. His poetic quatrains, full of metaphors and symbolism, continue to be analyzed and reinterpreted in modern times. A fascinating example is the prediction attributed to him about the French Revolution, though it's debatable whether his words genuinely pointed to that event. This leads to an intriguing thought. Does the power of these prophecies lie in their vision of the future, or in our ability to fit them into past events? Biblical texts also hold significant weight on this subject. Prophets like Daniel and Ezekiel wrote cryptic messages that, according to scholars, foretold everything from the rise of great empires to apocalyptic events. Yet, even with such broad interpretations, these words continue to resonate because they touch on something essential: the fear and hope of the unknown. Imagine living in a time when every eclipse or comet was a divine sign, a coded message about the fate of kingdoms and people. And who could forget the oracles of ancient Greece? The most famous of them, the Oracle of Delphi, was consulted by leaders who made life-or-death decisions based on the enigmatic answers of the priestess Pythia. It's fascinating how these oracles didn't provide direct answers, but rather riddles that challenged interpretation. This method, curiously, reflects the idea that the power of a prophecy may lie more in the reflection it provokes than in the precision of its words. As Socrates said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." The fascination with the future is deeply rooted in human nature. Since time immemorial, we've sought answers to the unknown, trying to predict not only disasters but also opportunities. This reflects a psychological need for control, even if illusory. Schopenhauer once said, "Life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom." Perhaps in seeking prophecies, we attempt to mitigate the pain of uncertainty and find some comfort in what lies ahead. When extraordinary events occur, earthquakes, pandemics, or the rise of unexpected leaders, people often turn to prophecies to make sense of the chaos. This quest for meaning isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's an attempt to find order amidst despair. For instance, after the 9/11 attacks, many revisited ancient texts, searching for predictions that could explain the event. This demonstrates that in times of crisis, the past can become an anchor to face the future. But why does this fascination persist, even in a world where science offers so many answers? Perhaps because science speaks to reason, while prophecies speak to the soul. There's a peculiar comfort in believing that the universe somehow communicates its plans to those who know how to interpret it. It's as if we are connected to something greater, something that transcends the tangible. And here, the question arises: is this connection a psychological necessity or a hidden reality we've yet to understand? Prophecies and scientific predictions may seem similar on the surface, but they're like water and oil in essence. While prophecies often rely on mystical phenomena or spiritual revelations, scientific predictions are grounded in data, evidence, and rigorous analysis. It's like comparing poetry to mathematics. Both attempt to describe the world, but use entirely different languages. Philosopher Karl Popper said, "All science is a quest to understand the world through refutation." Perhaps what separates the two approaches is the need to test, revise, and evolve, something prophecies don't require. Science predicts based on probabilities. It doesn't claim absolute certainties. For example, meteorologists can forecast rain based on weather patterns, but there's always a degree of uncertainty. Prophecies, on the other hand, tend to be more definitive, albeit open to interpretations. Think of modern astrologers, who often make generic predictions about significant changes or important encounters. What seems impressive is often a carefully crafted play on words. And yet, humanity remains captivated by both approaches. Perhaps because, deep down, we seek not only to understand the future, but also to give meaning to our existence. While science provides tools to navigate the physical world, prophecies touch our emotional and spiritual sides. This contrast creates an intriguing space where the boundaries between reason and mysticism become blurred. What if there were a point of convergence between the two? Something that explained the mysteries of the universe with both precision and beauty. Prophecies are like works of art. Each observer finds a different meaning. Their symbolic, vague, and open to interpretation nature is both their strength and weakness. Why do so many biblical prophecies, for instance, remain relevant? Perhaps because they speak in metaphors that transcend time, allowing each generation to find its truth. Jung once said, "Symbols do not conceal, they reveal." Thus, a prophet's coded words may be less about predicting the future and more about prompting the reader to reflect. The cultural and historical context is a crucial factor in interpreting prophetic texts. A prophecy written in antiquity, with references to kings and kingdoms, may take on new meanings when interpreted in the 21st century. A classic example is the interpretation of Nostradamus. While his predictions were written for his time, they continue to be adapted to modern events like world wars or technological advances. This phenomenon reveals a fascinating aspect of the human mind: the need to connect the present to the past in search of coherence. However, this openness to interpretation also creates pitfalls. Words that seem prophetic may be nothing more than vague phrases with the power to fit various scenarios. And yet, there's something intriguing about deciphering these linguistic puzzles, as if we were seeking a secret code of the universe. The real question may not be what the prophecies say, but what we, as individuals, choose to see in them. After all, are we interpreting the future or merely revealing our desires and fears? The human mind is a tireless machine for seeking patterns, even where they don't exist. This instinct, which helped us survive by identifying dangers in our environment, also makes us susceptible to seeing illusory connections. Here, confirmation bias comes into play. We tend to remember the prophecies that hit and ignore the ones that missed. As Nietzsche said, there are no facts, only interpretations. Often, it's our interpretation that turns a coincidence into something prophetic. Retrodictive effects also play a crucial role in this process. After a significant event, people revisit old prophecies, searching for a prediction that fits. For example, Nostradamus' texts were widely revisited after the 9/11 attacks. Although his quatrains are incredibly vague, many found in them an almost precise narrative of the event. It's like assembling a puzzle after already knowing the final image. The fit seems perfect, but it only exists because we know the outcome. These dynamics reveal something fascinating about our psychology: the need to make sense of chaos. Even when a prediction fails, our minds find ways to justify or reinterpret it. This makes us wonder, do prophecies speak of the future, or do they say more about how we deal with uncertainty? What if this search for patterns is less about predicting destiny and more about confronting the mysteries the world presents us every day? Prophecies have a peculiar power to shape individual and collective behaviors. They stir the human psyche by evoking deep emotions: hope, fear, or even a sense of purpose. When a group believes they are living the fulfillment of a prophecy, it can lead to movements of spiritual renewal or collective hysteria. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Perhaps, in following a prophecy, we are merely projecting our most hidden desires. Religious communities, in particular, are profoundly impacted by prophecies. Apocalyptic groups, for instance, reorganize their lives around specific dates, anticipating grand events. In the 2000s, The fear of the millennium bug was fueled by prophetic interpretations of a global collapse. Despite nothing catastrophic happening, the psychological impact was real, showing how belief can shape concrete actions. It's interesting to reflect. What if our choices were less motivated by external beliefs and more by an honest analysis of our own values? On the other hand, there's the strategic use of prophecies in the political and social realms. Leaders may appropriate prophetic messages to consolidate power or manipulate public opinion. During World War II, both allies and enemies resorted to symbolic messages to inspire their populations. This reveals a paradox. While prophecies can inspire and unite, they can also be used to divide. And so the question arises, to what extent are we guided by these beliefs or by those who interpret them for us? The modern world has turned the market for predictions into a thriving industry. Astrologers, psychics, and energy experts attract millions of followers with their promises to unveil the future. Social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok amplify these messages, making them accessible to an increasingly younger audience. Paradoxically, we live in the age of information but still seek answers in ancient mysteries. As Marshall McLuhan put it, we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. In this case, social media amplifies the influence of prophecies, shaping how we perceive the future. What makes these predictions so appealing? Often, it's the accessible language and hopeful tone. When a psychic promises great positive changes are coming, they speak directly to the longings of a generation seeking comfort in uncertain times. A curious example was the viral prediction about the planetary alignment of 2020, interpreted by many as a sign of rebirth. Despite lacking scientific basis, the psychological impact was powerful, prompting people to reflect and redefine their priorities. But there's also a dark side to this market. Vulnerable people facing personal crises may spend fortunes on consultations, books, or courses that promise easy answers. This phenomenon raises an unsettling question. To what extent are we willing to outsource our autonomy in exchange for emotional comfort? And so, modernity leaves us with a dilemma. How do we balance curiosity for the unknown with the responsibility of questioning the sources of our beliefs? Some prophecies have become famous not for their accuracy, but for their monumental errors. In 1910, the approach of Halley's Comet caused global panic after rumors spread that its tail's gas could wipe out all life on Earth. People bought gas masks and anti-comet capsules. The event passed without consequence, but it revealed something crucial: the power of prophecies to manipulate emotions and markets. As Voltaire said, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. On the other hand, there are cases where prophecies seem fulfilled, but only because they were reinterpreted after the events. A classic example is the prediction attributed to Nostradamus about twin towers falling in a great fire. These words, though vague, were associated with the 9/11 attacks. The hindsight phenomenon is a powerful tool for validating prophecies. However, one must question, are we truly dealing with predictions or merely reinterpreting the past? These cases underscore the importance of skepticism. In a world where information spreads rapidly, it's essential to question the origin and validity of prophetic claims. This doesn't mean dismissing all messages. Rather, it means using them as points of reflection, not absolute truths. After all, how can we differentiate a genuine vision from a coincidence or manipulation? And more importantly, to what extent are our actions guided by these beliefs?